Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering the Harum Scarum Sanitarium, which originally aired on October 23rd, 1976, and this is the 7th episode of the first season of the Scooby-Doo Show. Here we see the gang visiting Canada, where they get lost and they can't find their way back to the border. So instead, they coop up for the night in a haunted sanitarium, which is spooked by the ghost of Doctor Coffin. As for trivia, a sanitarium can mean an institute for mental illness, or it is a treatment spot for long-term disease such as tuberculosis. For Shady Sanitarium, I'm guessing it is a mental institution, as Dr. Coffin was performing tests that involved the mind. Another point of trivia is that getting lost in this area of backwoods is next to impossible in the Niagara region of Canada. Canada, while huge, has 35% of our population living in this dense area, and you just can't drive for an hour or 45 minutes in any direction without coming across some sort of area. Heck, my house is about a 45-minute drive away from the falls, and the area I live in is pretty busy area. So yeah, there's no way they could not find or get lost in this area, but whatever. It's all cartoon logic, right? Niagara region is very haunted, mostly because we had a lot of wars take place there. So we had like the War of 1812 and other wars that may have taken place there. And there's a lot of forts and such. So a lot of soldiers died in that area. So it is a very haunted area. And if you're ever in the area, there's a lot of ghost walks that go on in that region. Anyway, enough of my trivia. Let's get on with this show. The episode begins with the gang lost near Niagara Falls in Canada. Off in the distance, the creepy Dr. Coffin laughs on a nearby cliff.
Are you sure this is the road to the U.S. border, Fred?
I think we're lost.
The gang come to a roadblock where they encounter a friendly Mountie named Officer Oldfield. The gang explain they are tourists, and he explains the side roads are blocked to prevent criminals from sneaking over the border. The Mountie then allows the gang to pass and tells them to take the next left called Foster Road, which will take them to the main highway. The right fork, he explains, will take them to the ghost of Dr. Coffin, who haunts that side of the area.
It's a roadblock.
I am Officer Oldfield of the Royal Canadian Border Patrol. This side road's a favorite of lawbreakers trying to sneak across the border.
Our only crime is that we're lost.
You kids can proceed, but be sure to take the left fork ahead. Don't take the right fork. There have been lots of weird things happening on that road, like the ghost of Dr. Coffin, who went mad coming back to haunt the whole area.
Unfortunately, an ill-placed lightning bolt hits the Foster Road sign and causes it to swing to the right. So when the gang see it, they continue down the right fork and end up lost. Eventually, an ambulance passes by them, so they follow it to Shady Sanitarium. The gang watch the ambulance bring in a couple new patients, while Scooby sees the mad Dr. Coffin in a window above.
Keep an eye out for that sign, gang.
Right. And this place is some kind of sanitarium.
Sure looks creepy.
Maybe we could stay here for the night.
They're bringing in a new patient.
In this weather?
I don't see anything. Come on, everybody. The rain's letting up. Let's go inside.
The rain lets up and the gang get out of the mystery machine and immediately hear an organ being played. Two vicious dogs run out of the sanitarium and chase Scooby and Shaggy up a tree. The organ stops and the two vicious dogs wander off like two friendly puppies.
Zoinks!
Look out! Guard dogs!
Careful, Scooby! Watch those jaws!
Ringing the doorbell, the gang meet Dr. Tewksbury, who welcomes them in. They see the two guard dogs caged up, who are named Cuddles and Snookums, and they used to be Dr. Coffin's pets. Dr. Tewksbury explains he was Dr. Coffin's assistant and that Dr. Coffin was studying brainwaves and used the organ music to control the dogs. The gang say they heard the organ, and Dr. Tewksbury verifies that the ghost of Dr. Coffin was playing the organ. He then invites them in for dinner.
Ah, yes, Cuddles and Snookums. They were pets of the late Dr. Coffin, who was the original owner of the sanitarium. I was his assistant. Dr. Coffin was using them in his brainwave experiments. He could control them by playing various kinds of music on the organ.
Say, we heard an organ just before those dogs jumped us.
Yes, I'm very much afraid that what you heard was the ghost of Dr. Coffin.
That's the ghost the trooper warned us about.
Freddy asks why there are no patients, and Dr. Tewksbury explains they were all scared off by Dr. Coffin. All of the new patients he never sees. They all just disappear as well.
How come we haven't seen any patients around this place?
I don't understand it myself. They keep bringing me patients, but they vanish. Most of them were scared off by the ghost of Dr. Coffin. At first I paid no attention to the ghost stories, but then several of my patients suddenly disappeared. It's said he's returned from the grave to finish his brainwave experiments, and to do that, he needs people to experiment on. Do be my guests and stay for the night.
Of course we'll stay, and thank you.
The gang spend the night, and as they are settling down for bed, Scooby spots Dr. Coffin once more.
He's gone.
Out of fear, Scooby jumps on a mounted moose head that opens up a secret passage. Inside, they find a giant mirror that takes up an entire wall. Shaggy turns on a switch that opens up the roof where the moon blasts in and creates a focus beam of heat that gives Scooby a little burn, and some of Scooby's fur is burnt off. Freddy says it's a solar furnace, and it is typically used to harness the sun's heat. Dr. Coffin then shows up and scares the three of them away.
This isn't for moonbeams, it's for sunbeams. And this is a solar furnace. It's used to create high temperatures by concentrating rays of sunshine.
Back in the girls' room, Velma and Daphne spot the ambulance removing patients, and they do not look alive. Freddy, Shaggy, and Scooby run in, and everyone explains to each other what they've observed.
What's happening? They're loading people into that ambulance. Those patients don't look alive anymore.
Velma! Daphne! Open up!
What's the matter?
Like the mad doctor's running loose in this place!
Take a look at that ambulance.
Where could they be going?
By the looks of those patients, I'd say a cemetery.
Freddy decides to follow the ambulance, but unfortunately they come across a sign that says warning, bridge out ahead. Freddy risks it, but they lose the ambulance and nearly drive the Mystery Machine into the falls from the broken bridge. They also spot Dr. Coffin mocking them above on a cliff.
Oh, wow! Like we almost went over the side! Zoinks! The mad doctor!
Back at Shady Sanitarium, the gang decide to get some sleep. As Scooby sleeps, he hears the organ, which puts him in a trance, and he ends up dancing with Cuddles and Snookums, the two vicious guard dogs. The rest of the gang wake up and go investigate after they hear the organ music. They watch the doctor play his organ and yell at Scooby to wake up. This unfortunately wakes up the guard dogs as well, who chase the gang off.
Scooby acts like he's under a spell.
Scooby! Like, wake up! Like, head for the hills!
The gang end up in a room with a pile of wigs, which appears to be another clue. Splitting up, Scooby and Shaggy enter a laboratory. There they run into Dr. Coffin once more, who takes chase, and we get several of our usual comedic scenes as Scooby and Shaggy evade the ghost. Freddy and the girls investigate the morgue and they find several dead patients. Freddy removes one of the sheets and finds a stack of gold bullion with wigs on them to make them look like people.
Oh no! It's a morgue! All those patients that disappeared, they're dead.
Look, stacks of gold bullion.
You mean them little cubes you put in hot water and make soup?
With a wig to make us think it was a person.
Hearing footsteps, the three of them hide. Shaggy and Scooby then run into the room and hear the ambulance drivers approach, so they hide under two of the sheeted gurneys. The two are taken away by the ambulance drivers, so Freddy and the girls hop in the mystery machine and take chase.
These will do.
Creepers! They're taking Shaggy and Scooby.
This time, the ambulance doesn't get away and Freddy follows them into a mountain cave. The tunnel runs behind the falls from Canada to the United States. Inside, they find stacks and stacks of gold where Dr. Coffin is using a bread wrapping machine to disguise it as loaves of bread to make the smuggling process easier.
Stacks and stacks of gold bullion.
No, not the little cubes you put in hot water to make soup.
And what looks like a bread wrapping machine.
Scooby and Shaggy are discovered by the ambulance driver and we get one last chase on a minecart that ends up sending Dr. Coffin and his buddies through the bread wrapping machine where they are bound up. Freddy removes Dr. Coffin's mask and it turns out to be Officer Oldfield.
Now we'll find out who the Mad Doctor really is. Officer Oldfield?
Officer Oldfield is the ringleader behind a gold robbery that occurred in Montreal a month ago. Using the ghost costume and the two dogs, he scared everyone away. To get past any roadblocks, they use the ambulance to transport the gold to the mountain cave where he could conceal it as bread and smuggle it into the states where it would be distributed.
A man posing as Officer Oldfield is actually the ringleader of a multi-million-dollar gold robbery that occurred in Montreal a month ago.
And like he played ghost and used those dogs to scare people away from the sanitarium.
To get the gold as far as the border, the smugglers cast it into human-shaped figures wearing those wigs we found.
Then they shipped the figures by ambulance so the authorities would think they were just patients and let the ambulance go through.
Very clever.
Then they brought the gold figures to the sanitarium and melted them down into gold bars with that solar furnace you found.
And finally, they'd bring the gold bars to the cave, disguise them in bread wrappers, and take them across the border into the USA.
Quiet down there! A man's trying to get some sleep!
With another mystery solved, the gang head off on their next adventure. I give this episode a 10 out of 10, which should be no surprise if you've watched my first review for this episode. I didn't mention this in the opening, but I've redone this episode. This was the second episode I ever did, and I didn't have the best technical gear, and I was just getting my start, and I'm keeping that review up just to show you how far I think I've come. I'm still always trying to improve my videos and such, but it just marks a nice video where I can see, where I kind of got my roots and what direction I was heading in with my reviews. Anyway, I find this episode amazing in that it balances spookiness, mystery, and humor perfectly. All the right clues are set up so we can kind of follow along, and when the bad guy is revealed, it's a surprise, but it also makes a lot of sense. There's an incredible feeling of dread and suspense as Dr. Coffin. His design is just so frightening, and him in this episode is very spooky, and he's got those killer dogs that he controls. And it's also cool or creepy that we think there are dead bodies being transported by ambulance drivers and that they are in the morgue. That's kind of creepy too. I've done a lot of haunted tours and a lot of them took place in sanitariums. One I visited was Rolling Hills, and that's in the upstate New York area, and they had a creepy morgue, and it was creepy being in there at night. Basically you go to this place and they give you a tour, and then they give you just 5 hours just to walk around on your own. It's very creepy, and this kind of gave me flashbacks to that visit I had to that place. Finally, the humor in this is wonderful, but not over the top. So the humor just kind of is relieving, but it doesn't completely ruin the spookiness. For example, having Scooby, he was slow dancing with one of the guard dogs. It's funny, but it's also the tension's there because, any second that other dog could wake up and attack Scooby. And it just makes for a very kind of funny but creepy and just scary scene all at once. I think it's perfectly balanced, and I love that scene. So yeah, flawless episode for me, even though it probably does have some faults. I don't notice them. Someone else might point something out, but me, perfect episode, 10 out of 10. Once again, thank you for any likes, shares, views, subscribes. Helps my channel grow, keeps me motivated, keeps me happy. You're supporting my channel. Always love hearing it from you. I always try my best to reply. Sometimes with YouTube, I don't see the replies come in, but if I miss something, it's by accident. I try to reply to everyone, and I will keep doing that for as long as possible because that's my favorite thing about running the channel is hearing from Scooby fans. But if you don't reply or don't leave a message, no worries. Whatever's good for you. I understand, you watch episodes on your phone or you're on the go and you just don't have time. That's cool too. But even if you don't leave a reply, thank you for watching. Anyway, join me next week when I will be covering a bum steer for Scooby. And until then, stay spooky.